Welcome to my channel. My name's Ross and I'm here to talk about what I read. I apologize for the quality. I do not have a real camera yet. We were operating on a webcam, although it's a pretty good webcam, I will give it that. But it is not quite camera quality. But that's alright, we're just getting started. This is my first booktube video. I'm late to the party, both in terms of booktube in general and also this specific video. I thought that I would start off my channel by doing a best books of 2020. I know that we are now almost 2 full months into the year and everyone has already done these videos, but I am going to take my shot now. I have 10 books that I have in the official list, and I have a couple honorable mentions that I do want to just quickly touch on. Hopefully I won't ramble too much about any of the honorable mentions, because I can totally see myself doing that. So since this is my first video, I want to give a quick background on me as a reader. I didn't really read for pleasure for a very long time. I just got into reading regularly starting at the end of 2018, so I don't have a huge back catalog of already read books, but I'm certainly working through it. I read about, my goal is to try and do 60 books a year, so about 5 books a month. If BookTube goes well, and I really enjoy doing it, I can probably motivate myself to do a bit more, but for now, 5 books a month seems like a fair goal. In January I already read 7, and I've read 3 so far in February. I'm reading my 4th now, so I'm a little ahead of the game this year, so hopefully I can keep that going, because 2020 was a bit of a mess when it came to staying consistent. I read a lot of books in certain months, and then some months I read like 1, so hopefully 2021 will be a year of more consistency. That is the goal. So, to start off with the honorable mentions. So my first honorable mention is actually the last book that I read in 2020. That is Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. This is a classic of romantic suspense. It was written in the 30s. Daphne du Maurier is a British author from back in the day. And that was my first attempt with a Daphne du Maurier. I know she has quite a few that people are very fond of, like My Cousin Rachel, I think is what that one's called, and Jamaica Inn. But I thought I'd give Rebecca a shot. My other friend, one of my friends, was reading it about the same time, or had just finished it when I was about to start it, just by coincidence. So I picked it up, and I really enjoyed it. I did not think I was going to really enjoy it. I'm not very big on romance, really, or thrillers, sort of. I have a really difficult relationship with thrillers, but older books that have a thriller element or a mystery element tend to be more my speed. So I really enjoyed Rebecca. I thought that it was I totally understood why it's like a classic of the genre, why it's kind of like a cornerstone work of romantic suspense. I liked the concept of having the character not have a name. I think that made it, I don't know, that was just really interesting take, and I totally got what she was going for with that. But I just really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed the atmosphere. I thought it was a book totally built on atmosphere, totally built on build-up, just like waiting for things to happen, like knowing something is going to go wrong, but then it just like, you're just like, oh, what are we going to get to the moment when that's actually going to happen? And then it happens and you're like, woo! So that was my take on Rebecca. Another quick honorable mention I wanted to give is for Silver in the Wood by Emily Tesh. This is not even sure exactly what you call it. Well, it's definitely a novella. It's very short. I read it in one sitting. I think it's like 104 pages, 105, something like that. It's a nice Tor.com novella, and it follows... I am terrible, absolutely terrible with character names. The moment I stop reading a book, it's out. It's gone. I don't know the character's name anymore, aside from a few notable exceptions. But so Silver in the Wood, I believe, is the first book in a duology. I think the second book is out and it's a full-length novel. This first one is just a novella, and it follows Henry Silver, who is Silver, who is, I believe, a scientist of some sort who purchases a large villa-ish thing in England, and on the property of the villa lives Tobias, who is a somewhat magical man. He's kind of like a spirit of nature, and it's just like a queer love story between the two of them, between the landlord and his magic tenant, and they just have a great relationship. I do want to read the full-length sequel. I don't know if I'll prioritize it like immediately, but I think if I see it at a store eventually, then I will grab it and read it. So my third honorable mention is Miracle Creek by Angie Kim. This is a debut novel, and this book takes place in, I believe, modern day. It's like a rural town in Virginia, and it follows a Korean immigrant family who run a breeding treatment center. There is an accident, and the machine kind of explodes or has like a meltdown, and the mother of one child and then another person's child die. And so this is kind of a courtroom thriller trying to figure out who caused the accident. And I wanted to give an honorable mention because I think I gave it 4 stars, but I did really like it. And it just shocked me because this is very domestic. It follows very domestic issues, which aren't typically my thing. But I just thought it did this in such a great way. And it just felt really engaging. It had a lot of details about the courtroom, which I find really interesting. I like things that have a lot of political machinations or law, things that have a lot of like gritty details of people, like, you know, just like going at it, that I really like to read about. And I thought that this one was really interesting and did the domestic well because it was more about friendship or parent-child and not so much like married couples. This has a bunch of POVs regarding to like different people that were like associated with the accident, and my least favorite POV by far is the one that's like this like bitter married couple. Oh, they're just so annoying. But other than them, it was great. So, and then my last honorable mention that I wanted to talk about quickly is The Berry Giant by Kazuo Ishiguro. This is my partner's favorite book, or one of his all-time favorite books. So I read it on his recommendation so that we could kind of like share that. And I just thought this was a wonderful little story. It's just a story that takes place in like Arthurian, maybe even pre-Arthurian. I don't really know what the exact dates are for that. But I believe this is 600s England, and it follows an old married couple who live in kind of like a warren, like a hill that has been carved out and has like tunnels going under it, and there's like a whole community of people living in this tunnel system. And everybody who lives there is starting to like lose their memories, both like long-term and short-term. And so the married couple, who I think are Axel and Beatrice, yes, Axel and Beatrice. Oh, I actually remember that one. They decide that they want to try and find the village that their son lives in, or that they believe he lives in, because they can't remember anymore, like what happened to him, where he lives. So they go where they think he lives, and it's just the story of like where they go in between, and just like everything that happens and all the weird stuff that happens. It's very understated and kind of quiet, but there's still quite a bit of action, surprisingly, like a lot more than I thought there was going to be. If you are a fan of Kazuo Ishiguro, I know he's a very prolific author. This is kind of like a weird title for him because it's it's a low fantasy, but it is a fantasy. Then I would give it a try, see if it's something that is up your alley. So now we'll start getting into the actual top 10. So I have to check my list because I always forget what order I put things in. So starting with number 10, we have The Man in the Brown Suit by Agatha Christie. 2020 was a bit of a rough year for Agatha Christie for me. I think I screwed myself over and I read too many of her really good ones in 2019. So 2020 only had a handful where I was like, I really liked this a lot. A lot of them were just like, yeah, that was fun. I read it quickly. It's a good filler, but this one was definitely the highlight of her for 2020 for me. The Man in the Brown Suit, this is a standalone Christie. So it is not part of Poirot, Tommy Tuppence, Miss Marple. This is just a standalone starring Anne Bedingfeld, who is the daughter of I believe an archaeologist who's like gone under. He's like out of money. And so she's just kind of like, well, I guess if there's no money, I'll just try and figure something out. She's very go with the flow. Very go with the flow. And she somehow gets wrapped up into this. This is kind of like a sort of like a spy thriller one. She gets wrapped up into this conspiracy about a murder at a house, and she's very into like, oh, that must be a sign to do this. So like something happens, I can't even remember exactly, but something happens and she's like, that's a sign that I have to get on this boat and take this trip to South Africa. Like I have to do it. So she does it, and her hunch is correct, and the spy thrillery trail continues on to South Africa on this cruise, and then inland into Zimbabwe, I believe. So, but I will say this one does have quite a bit of I mean, it is an old book. It's from the early 20s, and it does have quite a bit distasteful portrayals of African people, of just like the parts that take place in Africa, like when they're not being racial, they're entertaining. It's very action, but when she starts getting on tangents about like the worker, like labor rights and stuff, it starts getting like, ooh, girl, that didn't age well. But this book is about 100 years old, so if you can stomach it, I would suggest it, and you're interested in Christie. I don't know if I would start there because it is a standalone and it is not a typical like mystery thriller or mystery whodunit. It's more of a spy thriller. So number 9 is Leviathan Wakes by James S.A. Corey. This is a writing duo and the first book in the Expanse series, which is a pretty prolific sci-fi series at this point. It has a television show that's been on for several years. I believe the 9th book, which is going to be the final one, is, I don't think it's out yet, but I think it's coming out in 2021. So the series is about to wrap up. I'm just getting started. I've read the first 2. This one was better than Caliban's War, I think. So this one made the list. But I just thought this was really fun. There are parts about the second book that I liked more. I liked more POVs. I liked having female POVs. Just having this one be, I mean, it's a big book. And having just 2 men alternating back and forth, 2 white men, it's just kind of like, okay, getting kind of sick of it. But it very much felt like we're reading a sci-fi story and like a mystery story, and they're like bouncing back and forth, but they feel very cohesive. But you're following James Holden, who's kind of the sci-fi story. He's a ship captain, like whose ship is blown up or something at the beginning of the book. And then you're also following a detective Detective Miller, who's investigating the disappearance of the daughter of like a very wealthy just like person, like capitalist enterprise or something like that. So I thought Miller's were really interesting because I love mysteries, and then I thought that Holden's stuff was really interesting because it was very good sci-fi, just the right level of heaviness, I think. It wasn't too science focused, but it didn't feel like it was arbitrary or taken for granted. Like, it is a sci-fi book, there is science, but it's not nuts. So thought that was really good, and I've finished the second one. I will be getting the third one soon. It's one of my series that I'm trying to work through currently. And then number 8 is going to be After Dark by Haruki Murakami. This is my first Murakami book. My partner has read Norwegian Wood. He bought this as his like, want to read it next, but I read it before him. He has not read it still. And I really, really liked this. It was very bizarre, but very entertaining, very breezy. It's a normal length book. It's a little short. Page-wise, it's like 250, but the pages are like, I mean, the font is huge, and it's like, I mean, come on. Like, I read it in like no time at all. It was really good. It follows a girl named Mari, I believe, place over one night. The chapters are by the time exactly, so it starts at 11:56 p.m. and it goes to like 7 in the morning. It's just her adventures staying up one night. It was very strange that you're bouncing back and forth between Mari, who's most of the chapters, and then also her sister, who has kind of like these magical realism dream sequence chapters where she's just like asleep in her bed, and it's just like weird things are happening around her while she's sleeping. And those chapters were very interesting because I was just like, is this happening? Is this book magical realism? Is this all dreams? It toes the line very well between like, you can't tell if it's magical realism or if it's just in her head. So that was a very tantalizing part to me, and I really enjoyed it. And I will definitely be reading more of his, probably Norwegian Wood, because it's the only other one that we own. And then we'll keep going from there. And then number 7 is going to go to 11/22/63 by Stephen King. This is obviously, I mean, I feel like most people at this point have at least heard of this. If they don't already know what it's about, it does have a television show on Hulu. I've never seen the show. I don't watch a lot of TV myself. But I did read this book, also on recommendation of my partner who read it before me and said he absolutely loved it. And I also really loved it quite a bit. I think he liked it just more than I did. This is probably his number 1 book of that year. Or maybe like top 3. As you can see, this is number 7 for me. So it's not quite that high, but it is a really good book. My favorite thing about this book, I think, is even though it's so long, I just felt like this book's pacing was so on point. It just you never feel like anything is being glossed over, but you also never feel like you're being like drudged through it, and you're just like, oh my god, I'm ready to move on to the next place, the next time. Like let's just it was a perfect pacing in my opinion. If you don't know what this book is about, it is about a man who goes back in time to try and stop the Kennedy assassination. The caveat being that he can only go back in time to one specific point in time. He can't time travel at will. And I believe that the point is like 1958 or so, something like that. I don't remember the exact date, but there is an exact date. And so he has to live in the past for like 5 years in order to get to the Kennedy assassination. And if he ever comes back, which he can, it starts over, and he has to do it again. So I just thought that was a really interesting setup. And I mean, the book kind of speaks for itself. Like, it's so well loved. I feel like it's a king that has really crossed over into like people who don't read like horror or anything like this. People read this book, and I know why, because it's really good. The only thing that I think halted it for me is that the main character, I think, in order to make it more believable that he's like doing this task, he's very, very bland. Like, he doesn't have any strings attached back home. He's just like this dude who has like no friends, no family. He has a cat, and that is like his whole backstory. His backstory is he's divorced, he's a teacher, and he owns a cat. That's his whole backstory. And I get the purpose, because it's like it allows him to bleed into this time period like easier without all these strings attached. But he just felt so plain, and like there was no character growth for me because there was no starting point. Like, he has life experiences, but it didn't feel like growth because he came from pretty much nothing, and now he's having experiences. So that was what kind of held it back for me. Number 6 is going to be Flowers Over the Inferno by Ilaria Tutti. This is a translated work from Italian, and I believe that this is I think this is a debut novel. This is a police procedural which follows, I don't even remember like the POV character's name, because he is like not the point. Like, he's literally just there to be like a fly on the wall for the true main character, who is Teresa Battaglia. She is the chief of police for, I think, like the state that this takes place in. This takes place in like far northern like Alps, Italy. So it's pretty rural. It's high up. And Teresa Battaglia is an elderly woman. She's like in her mid-60s. So maybe not quite elderly, but like she's older. She's like right on that cusp of like retirement age. But she has no plans to retire. And she is the best. She is the bee's knees. She is such a bad bitch. She is gruff and mean, but funny. And I determined in 2020 that like sourpuss, hilarious elderly women are like my favorite like trope in books. Like, I cannot get enough of like badass funny old women, and she served it to me in spades. This book was great. The twist, well, it's not a twist, like I think you know going into it, because I'm pretty sure it says, yeah, it says it in the synopsis. The like whole point of this book is that she's kind of trying to maintain her job while also dealing with the possibility that she is starting to develop dementia or Alzheimer's. It doesn't get that deep in this book, because it's just kind of like in her head, and like her experience with that, with like how she's feeling about herself, how she's, like her insecurities with how people are perceiving her when she has like little slip-ups, and trying to figure out if it's just age, if it's actually a disease. But yeah, it's just a very interesting thing to tie in. The murder itself, I don't even remember all that well. I just remember how much I loved her. Like, her as a character was just like amazing. Like, I could not get enough of her. And there is a second book in the series. I don't remember what it's called, but it is out. I think it just got translated. Like, since this is translated work, it's like behind. So it's been out in Italian, I think, for a bit, and we're just getting the English now-ish. But yeah, I just love her. I cannot wait to read more in the series. I need to pick that next one up ASAP, because this is another series that I would like to continue with. I'm pretty bad about continuing the series, so if I don't pick it up soon, it won't happen. So I need to pick it up. And then number 5 is The Last Wish by Andrzej Sapkowski. I don't know if that's exactly how you say it in Polish because of the J. The Z and the J messed me up. I don't know how to pronounce Polish very well. You know, Midwestern boy. I meet a lot of people with Polish last names, but I've never gotten a hang of it. But I believe it's just Andrzej Sapkowski. And this is the first book in the Witcher series, sort of the first book. The series is published very bizarrely. The first two books are short story collections, so this one and the Sword of Destiny are short story collections, which take place before the actual like full-length novel series of books, which I think there's 5 of those. So this is the first one that is a short story collection, and it was excellent. I read this because I played The Witcher 3, loved The Witcher, wanted to know more about the world, picked this up, and honestly, like, there are so many things that the game pulls from like the books. Like, there's just so many little like references that it's like you don't have to read the book to play the game. But like once I like read it and like the things clicked, I was like, oh, I appreciate it even more now. Like, it just makes sense. Geralt in the book they do a great job of mimicking him in the game. He's a little bit more chatty in this one because I don't think you could get away with being as strong and silent as he is in the games if it was a book, because it'd be like, all right, say something, like, what's going on? But it's just so much fun. These are really fun short stories. It was a lot of fun to read. Fantasy as a short story collection, that's not something I've read too much of. I know that more are out there, but I haven't picked any others up yet. But it's got me interested to do so because I just thought I had so much fun with this. Like, Geralt is such a great character. Dandelion is such a great character. Like, they're just so much fun together. I do hate Yennefer. I hated her in this. I hated her in Sword of Destiny, which I've already read, but in 2021, and I hated her in the game. So I just do not like Yennefer as a character. I apologize. I know there's a lot of Yennefer stans out there. I'm much more of a Triss guy in the game, but Triss is not in the book, at least yet. I don't know. She's not in this. I just really interested. I mean, I did continue. Like I said, I read Sword of Destiny in 2021. And I will probably continue in the actual series. I'm enjoying it so much as short story that I'm almost like hesitant to continue with the full-length novels because I'm like, will it live up? I don't know. I'll probably read the first one. I don't even know what it's called. I'll probably read the first one and we'll see how that goes. Because right now, like, reading this and Sword of Destiny, I'm just like, the short stories just work with this character. Like, it just works that way. Moving on to number 4, we have, I think, the only other repeat author on this list, and that is Stephen King again, with Dolores Claiborne. This is absolutely my favorite Stephen King that I've read. I've read 8 books of his so far in the last 2 years, and this is by far the best one. I bought this book because of the back cover. This is the only Stephen King book that I have purchased for myself. All the other ones my partner has bought, or we've already owned them. Like, he had already owned them before we were together. I saw this in a used bookstore, and I said, I have to buy this one because the back cover, it doesn't even say anything other than printed in USA. It literally, like, this is just hilarious to me. It's just, I can't even, I'm like staring at the screen because I like can't stop looking at it. Like, I can't look at the camera when this is on I gotta put it down. It's like, because I can't just sit here and hold this up the whole time with like him staring at me on like the back. No, I can't do it. So Dolores Claiborne, an amazing novel. It follows Dolores Claiborne, who is a woman in a rural Maine town. Of course, it's Stephen King, so it takes place in Maine, and she has a bit of a Black Widow reputation because her husband, like many years ago, died mysteriously. And people blamed her, but she was never convicted for it. And now she works as a caretaker for an elderly woman in town, and she also dies somewhat mysteriously. And so the book is, they bring her into custody. The whole book is her monologue. It is just a monologue. There is no dialogue, at least not in present day. I don't think at all, though. I think the way that it's told, there is not a lick of actual dialogue. It is just Dolores' monologue as she's speaking to the investigators who are investigating the death of the older woman, and which is just a really interesting, unique writing style I've never seen in like a full-length novel before. Just a monologue for like 300 pages. It was very strange, but very good, because the way she speaks is just hilarious. Like, she is so funny, but she's also so strong. She's been through so much BS in her life, and it really comes through. And you just follow like her and like what happened to the older woman in present day, what happened to her husband back in the day. You find out about both, and it was great. Just a great mystery with a great lead. Nothing scary about it. I've seen the movie with Kathy Bates, which is also an excellent film. So if people ask for Stephen King, but they don't want like horror, my first choice. I know a lot of people say 11/22/63, but I think with the length, This is much more accessible, and it's just so good. Like, better main character, in my opinion. Amazing. I have a bit of a tumultuous relationship with Stephen King because, like I said, I've read 8 of his books. I've only liked 3. I've had 5 that I did not really like that much. So, yeah, it's a little like, I think I need to be more mindful with the Stephen Kings that I pick up. Number 3 is going to be Check Please Volume 2, Sticks and Scones by Ngozi Ukazu. And this is a graphic novel. This is the second in a graphic novel series of just 2. And this is just freaking adorable. It is the sweetest, cutest books. I am obsessed with Bits. His name is Biddle. I don't remember his first name. They don't say it very often. He's normally just called Biddle. And I think it's Eric. And he is just the sweetest little, like, dumpling, like, little poppy seed muffin of a man. And I'm just absolutely obsessed with him. So the book is about him being gay and also on a hockey team in college. And that's pretty much the whole concept. I think that this does an excellent job of just, like, being what it is and being so entertaining, so cute. It doesn't feel like it's, you know, holding your hand. It's just, like, this cute little boy who, the first book, it kind of is like a Harry Potter thing with, like, the years. So the first book is, like, freshman and sophomore year, and then this one is junior and senior year. But then things are happening that are not related to school. It's just, like, that is the constraints of the timeline in these books. So this is the junior, senior year when he's, like, more important on the hockey team. First one is very much more about, like, him struggling with, like, his gayness at school around, like, these like, straight male athletes. And this one is more, they've already come to accept him at this point. This one is much more about him struggling with his gayness and his family. So I gave both of them 5 stars. They're both excellent, cute, beautiful books, just great art. The only thing I don't really like is, honestly, his, like, partner is pretty bland. I think it's on purpose because Biddle is, like, he's, like, so, like, over the top and fun and just, and his partner's fine. He's just quiet and doesn't have much of a personality. So he's not my fave, but it's okay. I'm okay with them together. At the number 2 spot, I'm going to cheat and make it 2 books because they are the 5th and 6th books in a series. This is Speaking from Among the Bones and the Dead in Their Vaulted Arches by Alan Bradley. These are the 5th and 6th books in the Flavia de Luce series. Flavia de Luce is a series of murder mysteries that star Flavia de Luce, who is a 13-year-old girl who is a prodigy at chemistry, and she lives in a mansion in, like, the country of Britain, and their small little town, Bishop's Lacey. And all the murders that happen in this tiny little town of, like, 200 people, it's amazing how many people can get murdered in these kinds of books. But I read these back to back, and so I'm just gonna, they're part of the same series, I'm just gonna give them 1 spot, because I basically read them as, like, 1 book. I like them more, like, I like them so much, though, for different reasons. I think that the 5th one, Speaking from Among the Bones, is the best mystery in the series so far. I've read through 8. There's 10. So I'm almost done with the series. I will be finishing it this spring. I think I'm going to save the 9th and 10th. I'm going to read them back to back. Like a nice spring day. It just feels right. But I liked this one because I think it was the best mystery. This one is about, they are trying to exhume a saint. They're trying to exhume a saint who's buried in their cathedral. And when they dig him up, there's already a fresh corpse in there. And Flavia is hot on the scene, ready to solve what that's all about. And then this one is much more about, a big component of the Flavia de Luce series is, like, her family dynamics. So they're not just murder mysteries. They're also a lot about, like, coming of age and just, like, her dealing with, like, her interesting family. And a big backstory is that her mom died when she was, like, 1. So that's, like, through the whole series, she's always, like, people are comparing her to her mother, and she's, like, never met her, so that's a very long-running thing. And this one is about her death, about the mom's death. And it's just, like, so, it's just so good. This is definitely the best one that handles her family life. So both of these, like I said, read them back to back. It's an excellent series. It's maybe it's not my favorite series. My favorite series is number 1. But my second favorite series, and I'm 8 books in. That's definitely the farthest I've ever gone with a book series. So I can't stress enough how much I enjoy those. And if you like mysteries, the first one is probably the worst. So I would read the first one, and then you have to read them in order. So I would read the first one if you're interested, and see if you can, like, get with the vibe I almost stopped after the first one because I didn't love it, but then I found the second one used for pretty cheap, and then I read that, and that is like, that's probably my third. Like, if I had to rate these, it'd probably be like 1, 2, and then the second book would be 3. So, and that just like kind of vaulted me, to use the book title, into liking her so much. So, and I think it's also getting a TV show. He's a Canadian author, so I believe it's going to be a CBC show. I don't think it's out yet, though. Highly recommend this, though, especially if you want to watch the show at some point. Number 1 for 2020, which is also the very first book I read in 2020. So it's been the longest, but I still remember it so well because it is just probably my all-time favorite book. And that is The Girl Who Kicked the Hornet's Nest by Stieg Larsson. This is a... Woo! I need to get a real camera so that you don't have to be seeing this... Ooh. You like barely... I mean, there is no cover. It's just a mirror. But this is the third and final book in the original Millennium Trilogy. It has other names in other languages, but in English it's called the Millennium Trilogy, which is the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo and the Girl Who Played with Fire. This is the finale before Stieg Larsson unfortunately passed away, and the book series has been taken over by someone else who I do not know their name, but I've not heard very good things about those, so I will probably stop here. But this is the story of Lisbeth Salander, who is a woman who has been through it. I can't give too much because this is the third book in a series. So I think most people's, from what I've like gathered from people who have read it and like what I've seen online, I think the second one tends to be people's favorite, and this tends to be people's least favorite. This was my favorite because I just thought that Lisbeth was at her most badass in this book. I mean, she's pretty badass in all three, but the second one she's pretty bad. But this one I just thought was like, damn, like the amount, like what she can accomplish in her situation is just incredible. She is amazing. The only thing I don't like about these books is that there isn't more Lisbeth Salander, because Michael Blomkvist is the main character for a lot of it. But I could have gone for even more Lisbeth, cut some of the other POVs, because she's everything. I aspire to be her. Well, I don't want her life because it's pretty traumatic. There's a lot of trigger warnings for this series. I feel like most people know that by now, because this has been around for a long time, and it gets pretty into sexual assault, pretty into regular assault, pretty much any. We're just gonna say blanket any trigger warnings. Just if you're like hesitant, just don't, because it's probably going to do it and then even worse. But if you're okay with just like gore and violence and pick it up. It is so good. Amazing writing. Stieg Larsson is an incredible writer. I am so sad that he passed away before he could write anymore, because I do believe he wanted to... This wasn't supposed to be a trilogy. He was going to write the full series, and that is why it has been picked up. But I think people are so... just like, they ended with his death, so I am sad that we cannot get any more. But I think this wraps it up incredibly. Like, honestly, I don't know. I feel like if it were to continue past this one, I could see it being like, okay, why are these being written? Because this is the wrap up. So, I couldn't say like enough nice things about this book, honestly. Please read this series if you have any interest in doing so, but do not read it if you are hesitant to read about any kind of assault, because it will give it to you in spades. Thanks for joining me while I talked about my books. I will probably be back soon with a worst of 2020, because you've got to follow up a positive with a negative. That is my motto. Hoping to make quite a few more books, and I would also like to do a few wrap-up videos of things that I've read. Like I said, I read 8 Stephen King books so far, so I think once I hit 10, I'll do a video where I talk about just the 10 that I've read so far. I want to do a nice Agatha Christie, maybe soon, because I've read 25. That feels like a good number to kind of just like give my thoughts on her so far with what I've read and what I have left to go. So yeah, hopefully you liked my content, my book choices, and if you have not heard of or have heard of and were interested in some of these, pick them up because they're all fabulous. So yeah, thanks, and I will see you soon.